creators, welcome back to the club. Today we'll be talking about creating agency for yourself. That means figuring out your value in the workplace, leveraging that brand, and ultimately putting yourself in a position of power and influence to affect change. We're your hosts, Akila Friend and
Ebony Chapman.
And for those of you watching along, you can see we're joined by a special guest. Let's welcome Vice President of Development of Morgan Freeman's Revelations Entertainment, Alicia Agramonte. Hey, girl.
Hey, guys. I was almost expecting like a laugh track to happen. Like I was very excited.
We're working on that.
Don't worry.
We're working on that. We are working on trying to get a little like system where we're like, you know, like getting all the sound effects together. Like
I'm ready for it.
We're just manually.
Yes. We'll add it in post. We add it in later.
Yes, Alicia. So we're so excited to have you. And like we mentioned, we're going to be talking about your journey, what you've done to really create agency for yourself, and how you've been able to put yourself in a position of just excellence
and leverage. Literally, you guys, I want you guys to really be taking like pens, your notes, like get them together right now, because Alicia has so many gems to be dropping, and I don't want you guys to miss anything, okay? Not that you can't keep replaying this episode or whatever, but you know. But let's get started. We want to start by saying how, like, we want to learn more about like your background. You're Hispanic and Black, and how you grew up. You grew up in a military family, and like, how does that affect you today? Like, what are those things that you're kind of like, yeah, you know what, this really sticks out to me in my childhood that has propelled me and pushed me forward in my career?
Yeah, I would say, oh, geez. Okay. Well, you know, my dad was in the Air Force, and I moved around my entire childhood, and very quickly I got to see a lot of different type of perspectives. Like that was very much, you know, my kind of upbringing. And because of that, I think I really fell in love with film and TV, because it was like the easiest way, I think, to see so many different types of perspectives too. And so to see them in the real world and see them play out on TV, I just kind of felt like I could understand all these stories that were being told. And so I moved around, like I said, my whole upbringing. My dad is a first generation Dominican American. My mom is blackity black. And I had a very nice dual kind of cultural upbringing as well, because I had both sides. My mom's side is from Texas. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. I have to bring that up. But my dad's side is from like Miami, New York area, and then, you know, the DR. I would say that it just brought a lot of color to my life. Like, I just think that I lived in a very unique, interesting dynamic with my parents raising me, and then just like with my family and moving around a lot. So I don't know if I'm answering the question here, but like, that's like
1,000. Honestly, yeah. I feel like your household was very spicy. I feel like there was a lot of like things going on in the house. I feel like because I feel like Dominicans, like their like persona is very like Hispanic people. They have like, they're very like, you know, they talk with their hands, like they're ready to fight you, like, you know, they, especially Dominicans.
Oh, you didn't see my hand movements as I was talking? No. I mean,
stand for their from where they come from, their culture. Like, you can't be playing about that stuff when it comes to like Dominican people. Like, they are really all about it. So I'm sure your household was very spicy, because us Black people too, we'd be ready to fight too.
Ready.
I mean, I would also say that there was like an extra culture too, because like my dad was very much a military man growing up. And so like that was like its own thing. I would say, it's so funny. I would say a lot of the spiciness came predominantly originally from my mom's side. Like I had straight up Texan, like Southern roots, and very, like my grandmother has like 6 siblings. It's like a very large family. And so like kind of that was really where I got like a bulk of personality, I would say. And then my dad's side for sure. Like I was raised Catholic. I mean, there was very like big kind of like religious and like cultural and things like that. And when I was old enough, I got to hang out with like my family, like in the New York side, and like really kind of I almost feel like you have to be like a little bit of an adult to enjoy the full spectrum of that. But like, yeah, I would say there was definitely a lot of spiciness growing up, which is weird because they were very confused on how they had me as an artsy kid. Like for as cool as my parents are the coolest people I have ever met in my life. I will never be as cool as them. I've just given up on that. But they were very like, oh, you want to go to school for what? again? You want to be in development? You want to work in filmmaking, all of that good stuff? They're like very confused. They're like, how is my kid an artsy kid? Which is ironic because my dad is a DJ. I just want to flag that. Dad.
Oh,
well,
ironic.
Honestly, I think there's so many little stories here. How could you not have gone into development? Like you are able to suss out like so many different aspects of people, stories, backgrounds. Like this is in a way like I feel like meant for you. You have
yeah. And so I went to it's so funny. I wanted to be a filmmaker very early on, so I applied to colleges. Never did I think that I would go to an HBCU, and I am representing HBCU today. But it ended up, I had no intention, didn't want to go. I was like, I want to go to the best film program. I want to go to the best whatever. And I ended up at Morgan State because they gave me a full ride. And that actually, I would say, made me a better like storyteller. Being more involved with myself. Like I felt like I was raised around like white communities, majority of my upbringing. I struggled figuring out where I fit in on the Black spectrum, and then going to an HBCU where you saw all different types of Black people and the true diaspora, from out of the country all the way to like just across the US. And I just got when you talk about flavor, there's no more flavor than going to an HBCU. And that really, I think, made me I would say it made figuring out who I was a lot easier. It was a lot of growing pains, but also a lot easier, especially coming into this workforce, because I really think you have to have a strong sense of self to kind of survive and thrive in this industry. So that's my upbringing.
I love that. No, I love that. And I like how, because typically when folks talk about HBCUs, it's, oh my gosh, I was dying to go for this and that and knowing that. But I like your story. I like how it seems like this was so serendipitous. I didn't plan on this, but it happened to me anyway, and I'm grateful for it. So I love that. I think that's great to share that, hey, even if you go, even if you don't really necessarily say this is something I wanted to do, there's opportunities in your life outside of HBCUs, like different things that you never know. If you're just happy, mind to it, it can happen.
Everybody, like, no matter if you go to HBCU or not, should go to a HBCU homecoming, should like have some friends who are in HBCUs. Like, it's so important to like, again, a large part of like, I'm so excited we're talking about like all the things we're talking about today, but I think that recently I've realized how important it is to surround yourself around a lot of different kind of people. I think that is so like important, and it allows you to figure out like your voice, and like without feeling like you have to kind of succumb to other people's voice and all of these different things. It's been such a advantageous part of my career to be able to hang around different kind of people. And that was really what an HBCU did for me, because I did not hang out with people that looked like me before college.
Hey, because honestly, I feel like that's where, me and you right there in that moment, I feel like a lot of people can relate, because having diverse opinions and ideas around you can really, like you said, it brings out things in you that you weren't possibly thinking about before. So like, you said you grew up in like kind of like a white community. You went to like PWIs before you ended up at your HBCU. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. And so, but it's like once you get into like college or work like your HBCU, it's kind of like, oh, okay. Like I did not know this, or this exposed me to this, or this gave me an idea, or I think I expressed before, it was kind of like during 2020 and during like the Black Lives Matter movement, it was like all of those things that made me feel like, oh wow, I really need to like start learning more about my Black history. Like I don't know enough. Like learning what you learn in school, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, a little bit of Malcolm X, and like that's it. And then you're like, yeah, that's my Black history. I know it. And then you're like, wait, like all of these other things happen, and you're like, wait, what? Like so my mind was like blown all last summer. I
think that was half of the folks when realized, oh, Juneteenth is a thing. Juneteenth is a holiday, and we happen to need to celebrate it this year. Couldn't believe it. And by the before I was at an HBCU, I was a complete scrub. I mean, this sounds like very like nice, like, oh, you just didn't know and then you knew. No, I was one of those people who thought I knew and I did not know. And so like, yes, I'm one of those people who, by the way, like I'm easily 20 Martin Luther King essays throughout high school and middle school, because I was just like, that's who you go to. But no, it was also like,
you always think you know better. Like, it wasn't like I went to college, like, I know who I am. I don't want to, like, I'm going to stand out in this way. And I'm not going to, like, nobody's going to judge me or look at me a certain way and think all of these things. And so much bias I had going into this experience about like what other Black people were like. I was like, I'm not like other. And like such a like scrub way of thinking. That's all I can really say. I was a scrub. I didn't know any better. I had a lot of friends really like look at me and like really call me out and be like, you're trying to say you're better than us, right? And I was like, no, I'm not, but I am. But I'm not. I'm completely was not better than anybody. I was very trash at my freshman year of college. But again, all that to say is it was very humbling experience. It's an experience that you got to be humble, man. That's a big part of, I'm sure, where we're going into this, but like that is a big thing to take with you anywhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know what, let's fast track into where you are now. As we mentioned, Vice President of Development for Morgan Freeman's company. Like, that's pretty impressive, but let's take a step back and think through. And if you can share, why did you know, or how did you know development was for you? And if you can explain what it is for folks who may not understand.
Yeah. So, I was like most people who said, like, I want to get in the film industry. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out. And I kind of worked in production first. I kind of snuck my way onto a set, like in college, a show called House of Cards on Netflix. And I remember it was like they were shooting out in the middle of the woods, but it happened to be near my parents' house. So I got up super early and all this stuff and got to work on that for 2 years actually during college. And loved production. Production, basically, what you see on the screen, making it happen. And then I moved to Los Angeles 2 days after college graduation. I'd racked up some production credits at this point. I was like, oh, it's going to be easy. I'm going to figure out what I want to do. And it was so hard. I definitely was one of those strugglers when I moved to Los Angeles, but I did get to work at BET as a production coordinator, working on working for the network on a lot of different shows, making sure that they happen from that POV. And then, I don't know, man, I fell in love with scripts. I fell in love with story. And that was something that I, from the very beginning, was always in love with. I started in theater. So like you really start with like scripts and material. And so development, as I learned, because I had no idea what development was when I got my first job in development, but development is very much, working with writers, working with finding those scripts that are great. And like, whether it's kind of developing the script and saying we need to strengthen characters, we need to strengthen some world and pieces, or going to go find talent like actors and directors and a buyer who's going to buy it. Like I pretty much do all of the stuff that it takes to even get a project greenlit for production. Which is amazing that I got to see production first and then get to see how you even get into production, which is so hard. It's such a hard process. And so I've been at Revelations for 3 years. I run our film development and I work in our TV space too. So that's, I want to say I moved up from assistant at Revelations Entertainment, and then I gradually went to director of development and now vice president. So yeah.
In 3 years, let's not. Right. If you're not going to hype yourself up, don't worry. In 3 years. I think that's absolutely incredible. And congratulations to you. This sounds like a great melting pot of all your experiences again, of all kind of what you wanted to do. And now you're creating those stories for other people. So I think it's awesome. It's awesome.
And it was interesting because everybody has like this certain way that everybody thinks you're supposed to get in this industry. You're supposed to talk about like all the classics. You're supposed to know all of this like language that like you're supposed to be like a cinephile and all these things. And I was just like, I didn't go to an agency, like go work in an agency like CAA to then go into development. I didn't do like any of these kind of like traditional people. I knew nobody in Los Angeles. And like, so I really kind of had to like quickly figure out like what were my strengths in this space. And I was just like, I love story. So I would freaking go ham and like go study story and like figure out how to be good in the development process. So nobody could like look at me and like say you're a sham, because like imposter syndrome is real. And so, yeah, I really just, I'm a people person. I felt like I really took the approach of what is the simplest way of doing this job, because that's how I operate, and just like making that a strength all the way through. And I think I guess that's a testament to like me moving up, I would say, because I really, I love my job, and I also find it incredibly easy at times. And so I think I we all put a lot of pressure on saying that the next thing is supposed to be so much responsibility and so much work. And I'm like, if you learn how to balance, you know how to do your job, essentially, you can do anything.
Yeah, I think that I don't want to like skip over the fact of like the opportunity that was given, because I feel like you said, there's no traditional way to like kind of get into the industry. Like, you know, Ava DuVernay literally picked up the camera, what, at 32? Like, there's no, you know, cookie cutter way. So I want to like go back a little bit in your story when you were saying that you snuck onto the scene House of Cards. You snuck like onto the set. I want to know, like, how did you do that? What happened? Who did you talk to? And then how were they like, you know what? You're so amazing. We want to hire you. Like, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So when I came to college, I was like I said, I was a know-it-all. I thought I knew everything and I was a good talker. I could tell you like, yo, let's do this. It's gonna be a great idea, blah, 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 blah. And then I would get like real lazy and never like execute a project. And so I had a lot of disappointed mentors and things like that. And I kind of got to this low spot of being like, what are you really doing? And so I was down on myself and my teacher tells me, hey, like, there's a show filming on a location that I own, or he was involved with it somehow. I don't know. But he's like, just sit on set. Don't say anything. Just watch how it's done. I was like, okay, all right, I can do that. So like for the first time, I remember just getting up hella early and just committing to just doing exactly what he said, except I'm a talker and I talked a lot during this experience, but I was just like, how can I help? And they're like, well, who are you with? I'm like, I'm with the location. They're like, oh, okay, great. So they gave me like tons of tasks. They were setting up for like some episode. They were pre-setting it for the episode they were going to shoot the next day. I was there all day. And by the end of it, the actual location manager came. And that's where I learned that every film department has a locations department. And that's what all the crew thought I was. And they're like, hey, heard you've been working for us. I was like, oh, and they're like, no, we were understaffed. And so we're going to pay you for today. And then how would you like to come on for a couple more days? A couple more days turned into a couple more months. A couple more months turned into me turning in like call sheets and saying to my teachers, like, here's my essay in the call sheet. Like, I'm not going to be in class today, but I'm doing the work. And I had a really supportive film program. So I really, honestly, my last 2 years of college, I was pretty much on set 90% of the time. I worked on House of Cards, a show called Covert Affair. I worked on movies like Nerve, and one of my favorite movies I worked on was Creed, that I begged. I wrote emails, cold letters to anybody associated with that project. I wanted to be Ryan Coogler's assistant. His brother already had the job, but I ended up getting another job, and I remember traveling like 3 hours because I lived in Maryland, and that was in Philadelphia where they shot it. 3 hours, like every day I would drive to go to work on that movie.
Hey.
Yes,
that's you know what? But I really like you guys. Did you guys hear that? Like, it is all about persistence and speaking up for things. Like, just putting yourself out there. She did not have. No one gave her the job. It was like she was like, okay, yeah, I'm doing it. Mind you, she had no idea what location it was when she was on the set. She was
bold about it. But that's what we were saying. We're saying we're creating agency, and I think what's really interesting about this, it's not like you knew that this was going to be House of Cards, Netflix. Like, this is an amazing show to at least start or catapult your career in that sense. You didn't necessarily know like this was going to be the moment, but you put yourself out there anyway in a position of how can I help you, and that makes all the difference.
That's how you approach it. It's like, how can I help you, not like what's in it for me. Like, how can I help you? People really respond really well to that, especially in the entertainment industry.
Definitely,
because like
where there's kind of like an underlying thing where you have to give in a sense.
Well, I mean, it's just such a
we can talk about that all.
I kind of think that there's like this interesting like relationship between like kind of, again, because they take it back to like that humility, but I also an ego and like curiosity. Like, this was a place where my ego was at an all-time low, and I just need to remind myself that I love this industry and why do I love it. And so I had to get curious again, and I had to learn again. I had to learn what I loved about this industry, and that is essentially how I fell into that job, is just because I went to go learn, which is ridiculous because I learned so much. I learned so much on that show. House of Cards will forever have a special place in my heart. Like, it really kind of kickstarted that next part of my career. It allowed me so many doors. I got to work for like David Simon, and I'm a Baltimore girl. So like working for the guy who created The Wire, like just like made my entire life at that time. So yeah.
And I also want to like highlight one other part in your story that you were saying. Yeah. We said that you got to assistant to exec in 3 years. Okay. Like we want to get into that as well. So let's talk about the fact that how you were able to make that great, amazing transition in such a short amount of time. A lot of people work at a place for 6-7 years and never really make it to an executive position. So how were you able to maneuver that path for yourself?
Yeah, it's crazy because it was really hard to get. I worked at BT, then I went back into production because I was like, I don't know if I want to work in an office. Then I was like, no, but I want to work in development. So it's really hard to get into a development job. And honestly, during that time, I was just volunteering everywhere. I took an unpaid internship at WB and like a whole bunch of other things. Literally, there's like 3 months where I was just sitting on unemployment trying to figure out like, what am I doing with life? But I made really great connections with people and like my old colleagues. I would go out to drinks and like all of these things. And honestly, I met somebody through one of my friends and they were working at the company at the time. And they were just like, we weren't even friends. She was just somebody who just enjoyed my energy. And she's like, hey, apply for this job. And like, it's so funny. I didn't even think she liked me for like solid, like first few times we met each other. So just great in that way. Now she's like one of my favorite people in the world. But yeah, so she let me apply for the job. They made it feel like I was so underqualified for this job. Like I was like looking at hearing all the other resumes and candidates, and they're like, well, maybe we'll just give you a second assistant position. I was like, all right, cool. And very quickly, I just, it was a little bit of imposter syndrome, a little bit of like, just needing a job so bad that I just kind of was like, I'm going to do whatever they need me to do. It was very much, whatever you want me to get you coffee, what temperature, like all of these things. I was just like, I really need this job and I really want to learn. I really wanted to be in a place where I could learn. And that's specific to what I was looking for at that time. I will say this, I have never picked a job, or I have always chosen every one of my jobs. I've never, I will backtrack a little bit on what I said earlier. This was not a job out of necessity. This was a job out of, during the interview process, I was interviewing them as much as they were interviewing me. And even though I knew maybe they might be looking for some more qualified people in this, I know that, I still felt like I would do the job 100%. So I still want to make sure that this job was going to work for me 100%. The last thing I ever wanted to do, and I did that situation, was be in a job that I hated. I was like, that was not going to work for me. And I kind of just had to have faith that like, I could be strong about what I wanted without being like, throwing a job away essentially. So, took that. So I got the job and very quickly, I would say, oh man, I did my job. I did my job for the first solid, like 6 to 8 months, like whatever my boss needed. I was an assistant and I just knew that in that time, my job was to be her assistant. My job was to focus on her and do all these, anything that she needed, because she was giving me so much knowledge. She was a producer every day on set. She was like traveling from New York and California and like all these 6,000 things happening. And I was so like, I don't know this world. I was out of depth. And I was like, until I know this world, there's really no need to move up. I was learning. And then at a certain point, I felt like I had really been absorbing everything that happening. And we didn't have a film department. We like assessed a need. I was just like, okay, what does this company need? And how can I be a part of that process? How can I add value to that need? That was very much the simple formula there. Find a need and then assess it. And so they didn't have a film department. I started reading film scripts. I started like, Blacklist and all of these different things. I started giving script notes on projects. We didn't have anybody like reading submissions. I would read every single submission. I found work-life balance later in life, obviously, guys. But no, I really just kind of did everything I could to show them that I would be an asset. I was doing the job before I already got the job kind of process. And so finally I was like, all right, I wanted to bring my first project in, and I talked to my boss. I said, I think that I might serve you better in this capacity. That's really kind of how I went at it. I was like, I know that I'm really great as an assistant, and I really think I serve you this way as an executive. And she agreed. And I'll never forget, I was like, my hands were shaking. But I wrote out, I went on all like Google searches. I was like, all right, what's the title I'm going to ask for? What are those job roles and descriptions? I kind of like really wrote one for myself and I presented it to her. This is the most like professional, like meeting that I've ever like planned for that way. But it was very beneficial. And that's pretty much how I did it the second time too. The first time was, I'm doing the job. Can I have that position in terms of, to really do the job well. The second time when I got moved up to VP, it was, now that was a reflection of how much I have done. Like the first job was more, here, I can do all of these things for you. The second one was, I've done all these things and I can still do more. And I'd like to be recognized in that capacity. So it was, I have a really cool relationship with my bosses in general. This one has been amazing.
I love that. Assistant, director of development to VP. Yeah. So those are the 3 positions that she moved up within 3 years. And I also think what could help people really understand, it's not like we're at HBO or like Star. Get me? I just want to be clear because I don't want people to get confused. Like, oh yeah, I could do this. And it's like, you don't work at a company that allows that space for you to live in that area. Yeah. It's like the company that Alicia is like blessed to work at is kind of a smaller it's company.
It allows for that kind of creativity. But I would kind of say that can happen anywhere. Like what you're doing, and I want to make sure that folks understand what I feel like the thread line and the through line is, again, creating agency, creating those opportunities for yourself to be in a position of power is something that you can do at any place. You know what I mean? And so I think it's incredible. And I want you to kind of even double down on that, because you mentioned earlier in what you said, the idea that you found a need, you assessed the need, you made sure that you're almost the best at, figuring out how to solve that problem and solve that need. Talk a little bit more about how you were able to not only find a need, but happen to find a need that aligned with your own purpose, like aligned with something that you wanted to do. But there are a lot of problems. Good job. But
it's so weird. I feel like goes back to what I said about knowing yourself. And there's specific things. I mean, I think it's so vague to say, oh, know yourself. Like everybody's like, okay, got it. I know myself. And I'm like, no. You have to know like what you're good at. You need to know like what you like to do, what you find value in. And then you have to then be strategic and a business person. And you got to say, great, how can I do that in a way that makes other people pay for me? Like, how can I do it in a way where other people get value from it too? And they need to recognize it's a value I provide. So it's very much a service in that way. But you have to listen. You have to take the time to wait. You're waiting because you're not waiting because you're just thinking, oh, at the year mark, I'll be able to go up for my promotion. I think that's like the worst way of thinking about something. You have to wait for the right opportunity that calls to you. I think we all had like lofty goals of like, oh, I'm going to be an exec by 25. I'm going to do all this and blah, 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 blah. And like, when I threw that out the window is when the things started moving. That's when the car, it's so funny. It's like baggage in a car, like holding you back. And like, when you throw all that stuff out, you're booming. And that's very much what happened here. I mean, I think at a certain point, I just, like I said, I was so curious. There was so much to still learn. There was so much to dip my toe into. And at a certain point, I had learned things and I wanted to practice what I was learning. That was really a big part of it. I was practicing what I was learning, trying to read these scripts, doing all these like things, being in the meetings. And at a certain point, I was like, okay, like I feel good about my thoughts. I feel good about like what my work is. And I was showing it to my boss. She was giving me the feedback that I was looking for, all of those things. And then I said, got it. So now that I'm good at this, let me look at the company. Well, the company needs somebody to be good at this in the film department. I actually come from TV. I've worked in TV my entire life. This was my first film job. I never I did shorts and stuff, but I never made a film. And so I just knew what I was good at. And I said, I never made a film before, but I'm really good at this. And I think you should give me a chance. And she did. I mean, till this day, it's still crazy. I've never and now I've brought in like multiple films and I'm very excited about the stuff that we're working on. And I feel very film now, but yeah, it's
business savvy in a way that is just like, I don't know, just like, it feels energetic. I feel very inspired right now, just like listening to the way that you move, because for me, I hear curiosity, like be curious about your job. Be interested in where you work and what it is that you're doing, because that will help you move forward. I feel like people who kind of do get stuck, you probably aren't necessarily interested in what you're working at, because then you're not wanting to learn. You're like, I'm fine right here. I do my job. Everything's fine. And it's like, you're not progressing forward because you're not curious about what it is that you are learning. So I think that is an amazing takeaway on that one.
Yes.
Yeah. I will say this, like, and I think I told you guys this before, is I really don't think that our jobs are our lives. I just don't. I think that we have purposes, and like one way to live out our purpose is through our job. So it should be important, but there are like 3 other sectors of that too. And the reason that wasn't so important to me is because I think that when you're focusing so much on your job, and your job is the only thing that's going to make you happy, and it needs to work out the way you need to have it, it almost strangles like the whole reason you're in the first place. And like, you know, I know people who, I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and she was at a job that she felt like, you know, Alicia, they're not going to move me up. She's like, they're not going to move me up. I'm having a hard time finding another job. I don't know what to do. And she's like, you know, all this positivity is great, but like, I just don't know what to do. And I said, well, what access do you have at your job? Like assess what access you have at your job. And she's like, I was like, what do you do? She's like, well, you know, I work with the network execs. I do all of these things, all the coordinator stuff, but I don't do any of that. I was like, all right, leave that alone. You talk to people outside of your job. You do things that allow people to see how great you are at your job and how easy it is for you to do that job. Like, you have a chance to network with those people. You have a chance to just really continue to show them that you're a partner to them. I was like, who can you make partners with? Because partners are, I think, people who take you the distance. And like, again, when I think about that woman who I met, who was a friend of a friend, who ended up getting me helping me with my job opportunity at Revelations, I think that's exactly what I did. I was like, you know, I made relationships that maybe don't show you a direct route, but I think that's flawed thinking too. I think you just need to assess your environment and figure out, you know, where can you work on? Like, maybe you're going to go find to another job. Okay, that's great. But in the meantime, you're at this job. Don't let that be wasted time. Go figure out what you can still gain. You're always learning. So you can't tell me that there's not anything you gain from a job, and you have to figure out what you can be sharpening. Otherwise, I don't think you're ready to do the work that it's going to take you in any other place, you know, whether it's, even if it is just your boss doesn't care about you and doesn't want to see you evolve, the fact that you're not working and figuring out what to work on in the meantime means that you might not be ready to step into, like, again, you're stepping into leadership roles, you're stepping into managerial roles. You know, everybody forgets that this is mainly moving up, means moving up and taking more responsibility and like delegating that responsibility out. And that's a lot. And I just think that everybody kind of has this idea of, you know, there's agency in terms of I can do it. And then there's agency in terms of like, oh, I know, like the knowledge of agency, I think is so important too. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I mean, yes, I just think that really does. I love that, because I think, you know, it goes back to something else that we were talking about earlier. And I want you to make clear for the folks listening, the idea of dating your job, like, you know, the idea of doing that. Can you talk more about what that means and how you've been able to do it, how others should potentially do it too, like any skill sets or any tools that you can give other people to say, like, your job is not only a place where you can do the job responsibilities that were outlined to you on the job description, it's also a place for you to do kind of what you were saying, you know, see how you can create agency and create change for yourself, but also for others around you.
Yeah. I mean, again, I definitely think that you have to know your surroundings. You have to know how everybody operates. I mean, I spend a lot of time, I'm a weirdo. I like to like observe people. Like, I'm very much, so I like to figure out, like, if somebody's stressed out, why are they stressed out at the work? And like, is there anything that I can be helpful on? You know, is there anything that I serve value in? I have to be careful. There's a difference between somebody needs help and like, you're just trying to jump in for some potential, or you're jumping in because you actually think you have value. Early on in my career, I will say I was one of those people who I would say, oh, I know that answer, or I'll give you an answer. And I damn well did not know that answer. I need to Google verify all these things. And like, the hard thing about having agency is when you talk the talk, people think you walk the walk and you don't always walk the walk. And so, yeah, no, I think it's listening. I think it's sharpening your skill sets and then saying, where can I apply them? I mean, like over COVID, I'll just use an example. It's not a work one, but I think it works, is I've been working on filmmaking lately, like cinematography. And so every day I was reading a whole bunch of books, watching a whole bunch of videos. And finally, every day I started practicing with lights. I started putting them up. I started doing them. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, to I somewhat know what I'm doing. Oh, I know what I'm doing. Oh, I want to do like special things. And so I was doing all of that. And now when people hit me up and they're like, yo, Alicia, like, or they're like, oh man, I need to film something and I don't have anybody, or whatever. I'm like, oh, well, dude, I'll help you. Like that's where I serve value. I was listening and I was preparing. It's when preparation meets like opportunity, right? I guess that's like pretty much really where it is. Sometimes it's not about finding it as much as listening for it to come while you're also kind of working on your individual things. There's so much to work on. I had to work on, writing emails. No, I had to work on like communicating with people. You know, I was really good at talking at people instead of talking to people. Like, you know, that was something that I would read books on. I would like do stuff. I would try to have conversations with my colleagues and say, did I go back from that meeting knowing more about my colleagues? Or did I go back from that meeting saying, damn, I talked a lot during that meeting? Like those are examples I would say in the workplace of like what I did to figure out. I think you're always improving yourself. And then you always improve yourself. People see that you're always improving yourself. And that is also a part of that whole sense of agency. I mean, we're going to talk about agency, right? It's having ownership over who you are, having ownership on how to use who you are. To do that, you really need to be sharpening the tools in your toolkit. You really need to know what those things are that are going to drive that agency.
I love that. And we also talked about, just to like switch gears a tad, we talked about being, okay, this is obvious, right? Like Black VP exec at a company that doesn't necessarily reflect the people that you serve, right? So working with other people who are of other races, mostly white, if you're in a company with, you know, how do you maneuver that? How do you go into a meeting, pitch an idea, and come back and be like, oh yeah, they totally understood what I was saying. Or, you know what, dang, I gotta teach them X amount of lessons before they can really understand my point. Do you ever get pushback on any of your ideas? I know that was kind of like a couple questions in one, but yeah, I want to get into that.
Yeah, I will say it's so funny. I'm very thankful that the industry is kind of having a turn in the tide now, but like majority of my experience has been working with people that don't look like me. And if I was working with people that look like me, they were at my level or below. It was just like, they weren't in leadership positions. Let me put it that way. And I would say that, okay, so it's a little tricky. I feel like we all speak different languages, but we all have universal experiences, like we know that if we say a story a certain way, we have to be persuasive. That's really what I'm going to say there. Like, to be persuasive is to speak in somebody else's language, but still be saying what you're trying to say. And I think that is something that I had to learn. Like, I think I'm a very unfiltered person. I'm a person who likes to just like give it as it is. And like, I have learned how to do that effectively. But before that, I had to learn how to speak in other people's language. I had to learn how to like, okay, I know why I like this show. Let me tell them like, there's a horror book sense. This is The Dark Knight meets Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And now they're like, oh, okay, tell me more. They understand that. You know what I mean? Those are two shows I know most people have watched. And so it's all about being persuasive. And then it's also about, you have to strengthen, again, I hate reiterating this, but you have to strengthen, to me, a tool is your voice, and that's another tool you have to sharpen. And so I struggle because I know that not everybody's going to get it, but I also think that it matters that if people don't get it, then it maybe is not for them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think we should produce everything. There are certain things that I know, like as a producer, I'll probably never produce. There are certain things that I think that we're not the best producers for. And there are certain things that I'm like, yo, we're the best producers for that. The cool thing about my job in general is that there are 6 million production companies, and like, just like the basic layout for, I think, for anybody who's listening, is there's production companies, there's studios, there's networks. I won't like go too specific into it, but production companies are helmed by producers who go find the writer, the script, the whatever, and then they go bring it to the people who have money, or bring it to the people who have an outlet, like a network, like a TV, somebody, Hulu, right? That's who's going to put it up. They're going to distribute it. But to that point, there's also 6 million writers out there. There's 6 million directors and actors, and they all have different visions. I don't know that Tim Burton is going to go to, well, he might, but I don't know if Tim Burton's going to go to like Clint Eastwood and say, like, let's go do a movie together. Like go produce my movie. I don't think Tim's going to think Clint Eastwood can produce his style of movie. You know what I mean? And so I say that to say, I know my company. I know who I am. I know what I can produce. And so I now speak from a level of, I don't necessarily believe in the we company motto. I believe that you're hiring me because I am who I am and I add value to your company. And so when I pick what I like, what I think knowing that you're buying into me, knowing the mission statement, knowing that you're buying into me, knowing that I'm serving this company, I'm going to pick things I like that I think are reflective of the company's mission statement and things like that. And so that's really where I've found my agency, like nowadays, and how I feel like I can talk is like, this is why you have to be persuasive, but you got to say, this is what this movie does for me. This is what I know it's going to do for this audience, this demo, because it needs to sell. That's really what people care about. They need to know that it sells. And then they need to know that I feel like it's authentic. And then they need to, and that's kind of where I go from there. And if they say, no, that's not for us. Okay, this is a job. This is a job where I'm getting paid to serve your vision. Cool. I might go do something on, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what I mean in terms of like figuring out your job is not your whole life. You should not cry if your job doesn't want to do something. If you want to go do it, go produce it. Go on the side and produce it. And there's a lot of companies that will, give you the blessing.
Totally. I love that. How about, on the flip side, there's probably going to be a lot of naysayers, a lot of folks out there that are like, this is easier said than done. Of course, she's saying that now. She's now a VP, things of that nature, or just generally, the entertainment industry is so hard to break into. This was a one-stop shop. Like, this was just a story. This is not everyone. Like, what's your response to folks who may not truly believe in everything that you're saying?
I think that there's a reason that kids are like hella curious and also like hella naive, like, you know what I mean? But it works for them. Like, they live in this world of like, whatever, a lot of naysayers can say what they want, but like, I did this by 27. And like, it wasn't because I was spending a lot of time listening to naysayers. I was just kind of like, I was being curious. I was literally just, I was like, and I remember the times that I beat myself up the most, the times where I was angry the most, the times I was super critical the most. I was only critical at me. I was only critical of, I didn't get there far enough. I didn't do this right. I'm like, all of these things. And then you stop wanting to be curious because you know what I mean? You're mumbling it with yourself. And I would say, so to what I say to the naysayers is like, if you really believe that everybody else has domain over your happiness, I just like, if that's the world you want to live in, by all means pursue that, but that's not what I want to live in. And like, I think everybody has a choice. I think everybody can believe what they want to believe in. And I just believe that going towards the light is really where I kind of, I think if I keep being curious, there might be, I don't know, maybe one day, like, I don't know. I watched fantasy movies growing up. Like, I think Narnia is on the other side of the closet. I think like one day my owl is going to come and I'm going to go to Hogwarts. And I say that to say is like, I just always thought about like coolest things ever and like the happiest things ever. And I don't let other people's their depictions of what life should be, how you should do things, get in my way, because I just feel like I fell in love with artists who completely didn't do that and look at where they are now. And if I can do that and still maintain some happiness, that's what I'm going to go for.
Yeah, I love that. It's so funny. When I was younger, I used to have like this thing of like stuffed animals. My room was like full of stuffed animals. So my old bassinet, I had a bed, and then I had like my old like crib in my old room, and it was filled to the brim with stuffed animals. And I swore and I had a thing of Barbies. I swore when I left the house that they all were partying like Toy Story.
Having a great time. Yeah, Toy Story was
100.
I swear.
Yeah. 100. I was only mad because I just knew that they weren't hanging out with me. You know what I mean? But I was like, but one day they will. Like so all my friends would tell you, like, I'm a super energetic, I'm a super optimistic person. I live in the light, which also means that I'm super susceptible to having my dark days, because I think that anybody who pursues the light, the dark will try to grab you a lot more. And there is a balance. And I would say that that's why you have to figure out how to not be naive while being curious. That's the one thing that kids get curiosity, but they get naive. And as you go older, I'm not naive to the world. I'm not going to just, I'll just walk in and like everything's going to be perfect. But what it is I think that curiosity wins out. And I think that, being responsive and being, paying attention to the world, you'll see where the black is. You'll see where kind of the things are that, you have to pay attention to, but then you'll know how to navigate your light even more. I think like the black is like the board, you know what I mean? And you need it so that you can see the light, but it's your job to kind of navigate how the light kind of moves through.
Absolutely. And you will appreciate the light that much more because darkness exists. So I think that's incredible.
I'm a very visual person, so you're just gonna get a lot of like fishy movements and
colors. I'm here for all of it. Just real quick, you share what's next for you. We've talked about where you've been, where you are right now, your ideals, but if you can just give folks who may want to follow your same pathway and may honestly see your vision and say, oh my gosh, Alicia is speaking to my soul right now. What's your next step?
Okay, I'm going to give you like my hokey spiritual answer and then like a real answer. Okay. I have this theory that everybody has a purpose, and like you can divide that purpose into how you can serve it for others to help others and how you can serve yourself. Like, that's really how I believe. And I just think it's simple. It's a simple approach to life. And so I just know my purpose is to, I like to inspire and be inspired by people. I think that's why I'm in this industry. I like to see art made because I know it inspires people. And so I could tell you all day long, I want to be a mega producer and a filmmaker, and I want to do all of these things. And I do want to do all of those things, but like, I just want to continue to shape and refine my purpose. I just want to continue to, inspire people and to be inspired by people. And like, that is really, I don't know, I just try to find that in my everyday life. And I feel like that's kind of worked out on a macro level. I don't want to overthink the plan, because I think that the plan obviously never works out 100% the way you want to. And when you look back, you don't want to think about how much time you spent working on a plan that did not come to fruition. So I just spend a lot more time saying, how can I look back and say my purpose was successful? I was successful in my purpose. So that's where I hope that works as an answer, because that's pretty much the best one I got.
Perfect.
That's your answer. And
I want you to like say it again for the people in the back. Like, it was good. I loved everything you said. I thought that was amazing to just step into your purpose and continue to be curious.
That's the best you can do, and that's the best thing to do.
And not to focus on a plan that didn't work out. I will take that one, write it down on my mirror, and say that again and again and again, because that one really, I hear it. I heard you. I heard you. Okay. Yes.
I spent way too much time being upset with myself instead of saying it's okay, self. You know what I mean? Like, if I had just said it's okay, self, I would have moved past things a lot more. There are times where like, y'all ever be in a conversation and like somebody says something, riled you up, and you want to say something back, but then somebody shifts the conversation and you're like, wait, but I didn't say this thing I need to say. And so now you're spending time trying to figure out how to introduce it back in the conversation that you've missed where the conversations went, because maybe nobody really wanted to talk about that thing. They weren't really trying to rile nobody up, and they probably riled it up because they like said it horribly and it's not really what they meant. But if you listen to the combo, if you follow the stream, what they're actually talking about is so much better in the conversation you actually want to be involved in. And I literally just think to myself, how many times have I been in that position where I brought back a conversation, where I took it and was I satisfied with that conversation at the end of it?
And then it's so much more sour because it's like, okay, now that I said this, can we go back to this conversation that is that much more enlightening? No one wants to do that.
Nobody wants to do that.
Right. You missed the point. You missed the point of the whole combo. You missed the train. It left you, honey. Yeah.
I could be laughing. We could be laughing and smiling so much more than we are arguing and having a conversation about theoretical. I'm a thinker. I love to talk about things that don't actually exist. And like, what would happen if somebody ate cheese in Mars? Like, would they be lactose intolerant still? I don't know. But like, these are things that don't concretely matter in my life. And so I need to know when I'm a philosopher versus when I'm a real person who just needs to bring purpose into the world and like continue to do my purpose. So it's separating all of those things out.
Absolutely. I love that. Okay, are we ready to switch gears into the game?
Or did you have another question? Hey guys,
okay, wait. But we're like, okay. Before we play the game, okay, we just want to thank everyone for continuing to watch, stream, listen to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and watching us on YouTube. Every week, you guys, we come and do this for you. We put in so much love, sweat, and tears into making a presentable show, inviting amazing and wonderful guests like Alicia, and we want you guys to enjoy it. So please continue to like, subscribe, and please comment below so that we can continue to, show y'all love. You show us love. Like, you scratch our back, we scratch yours. You know what I'm saying? That's what we want to do.
Everything at the Black Creators Club. So that's
yes. Okay. So now I think we want to play the game.
Let's do our game. So Alicia, so one thing that we do, and before I say this, actually, as you all know, that's been listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, you know that we're here to redefine what it means to be a creator. But we love our, down-home creatives. At our hub, we are definitely entertainment. We have a background in entertainment and media as well. And so we are blessed to be here with you. And so we have a game that we like to play.
Literally our signature game, okay?
Especially with those in the industry. And it's called In the Room or In the Hallway. And so what we'll do is read you the log lines of different movies or shows. We won't tell you what the show is. If you do know the show, feel free to say it. If you don't, that's not the purpose, so it's fine. And after reading the log line, what you'll do is answer if you want to be in the room, i.e. be the person that's
producer,
development, the producer, what have you. Or
man,
I'd rather be in the hallway for that one. This isn't my jam. So we'll have Ebony say,
I'm going to read the first one. I'm going to read the first one. Okay, so you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. A fictional account of one incredible night where icons like Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, and Jim Brown gather to discuss their roles in the civil rights movement and cultural upheaval in the 60s. Are you in the room?
In the room.
Are you
in the room, in your face. You in the room. I'm 100% in the room.
I love that one. So for the people who maybe not know, that one was for One Night in Miami, which is directed by Regina King, and it is on Amazon Prime. So if you guys want to check that out, it is available.
And it's fantastic. It's like a real entertaining movie. It's not like a When They See Us. Like, you'll enjoy this movie in a very, yeah.
You saw it already. Okay, yes.
Yeah, I like the idea of that. It's kind of like something, because oftentimes when we talk about Black folks and going through the history of things, I think we were talking about it beforehand too. It's like almost a focus on trauma. And so I like how this is somewhat different. Like,
yes, it gives you some hope and some energy, some love and some life. We love all of that.
Great. Okay, so the next one. This person is sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms in prison for the murders of his wife and her lover, and is sentenced to a tough, prison sentence. However, only the person sentenced knows that he didn't commit these crimes. While there, he forms a friendship with someone else who experiences, brutality of prison life, how you adapt, how you help the warden, etc., all in the course of 19 years. Are you in the room or in the hallway?
I am in the hallway. I know that there are people who would be in the room. I personally am in the hallway.
Yes. Wait, we want to hear why. What's the reason?
So I personally am at a place in my professional life where I want to champion our artistry, and I don't necessarily want to champion continuing to see our trauma. That being said, I know it deserves a space in the world, and don't get me wrong, the writer and director, if it's a good script, I mean, I should probably be in the room, but I personally want to be in the hallway knowing that it did great in the room.
That's a good one.
Okay, so what was the show? What was the movie?
The movie was The Shawshank Redemption. So that's where I was like, okay, this is spicy. Morgan Freeman, for those who don't know, starred in this film as well.
I think I'm also marred. I have to say this. I'm marred because anytime I hear somebody incarcerated, I'm thinking it's for a crime they didn't do. I'm thinking black man, and obviously, I mean, Shawshank is kind of that, but it's kind of not that too. So, but yeah.
I get that.
No, we love it. Okay, so the next one is modern day Black women might be described as strong and confident. In other words, just the opposite of these friends. As the best friends deal with their own real life flaws, their insecurities come to the forefront, and together they cope with it with an endless series of uncomfortable everyday experiences. Are you in the room or are you in the hallway?
Okay, that log line is kind of like, I don't know what the story is. Okay, I mean, I'm interested. I'm in the room. I don't know what the story is, but I'm in the room, I think.
You think?
Yes.
I mean, so basically, so the log line was for insecure.
And I think that was a great assessment. This is kind of like, well, we could take this anywhere, really. Every episode is somewhat different.
Right. And the log line was very ambiguous. Mm-hmm. It didn't
have
a lot of hardcore details and like what the show is. Like Akila said, every episode is different, like two friends just trying to figure it out all the time.
I was like, insert every show we've seen about friends. Yeah. Copy.
So where are we? Are we in the room or are we not?
We were in the room. We're in the room. I would be, and then I'd probably be like, thank God I was in the room once I realized the content of the show. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. And the last one for you. This show follows the troubled life of a 17-year-old girl, a drug addict fresh from rehab with no plans to stay clean. Are you in the room or in the hallway?
I'm in the freaking room. Oh my God. And I'm in the freaking room.
For those who don't know, this was for Euphoria.
Yes, yeah. That one I feel like, who wouldn't want to be in the room for that one? Like that one is, oh my gosh. I recently watched Euphoria. This was like January, so I'm super late on the train. I already know. I know. I'm super late on it, but it was so amazing. And I think Zendaya, just like her being kind of like a Disney star, and the way that she, oh my gosh, the way that she
and blossomed into such a credited actress that you can all say like she was ready for this role and the role was ready for her. Like
she's always been amazing. I am in a perfect role. When I was younger, I think I wanted to I wrote an episode for Degrassi. Like when I was I remember thinking I wrote a piece for me to be Drake's daughter or his sister. So when I say to me, I love those kind of dramas about teenagers and dealing with things that you do not traditionally expect, but then diving into it. And I thought Euphoria is just incredible.
It's insane to see how many teenagers actually relate to really dealing with adult trauma. It's insane to know how many children, teenagers
were so exposed. I mean, so I think Degrassi was groundbreaking because and shows like it and why Euphorias matter. And there's another show, I'm blanking on the name of it, Netflix I just watched, but something Army, Grand Army, crazy.
So good.
Crazy. And no, but it's true. I mean, we have access to internet and all these things. And I'd rather kids watch Degrassi, Euphoria, Grand Army, all those shows, as opposed to go live the hard realities of it outside. Because the messages are there. It's not just, oh, it's so cool to do this. It's no, here's the repercussions of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, these kids are exposed anyway. So like you said, you might as well get them to know what happens now and what happens later.
But what's great about it is that at least there's a show that documents it. So it's it allows an opportunity for parents to have conversation. Because the problem is that when you let your kids kind of be a little wild, you let them live, which is fine. But when there's not an opportunity for conversation, I feel like that's when this disconnection can happen. But shows like that do create an opportunity for that. So I think that that's amazing.
And as much as my mom like cared to watch them, I watched all of like my adult whatever, majority with my mom. So I felt like I always like had a nice barometer like there. I use barometer often. I'm not sure if I use that word correctly, but it's my favorite word.
That's what we should title this episode, barometer. Yeah. Creating barometer.
Good word, man.
Love it. Oh my God. Well, this was
we're literally twins.
Literally. This was an incredible conversation, Alicia. Like, this was amazing. And I hope and I pray that everyone who listened in, watched, really were able to gain some insights, because there were a lot of gems shared. So rewind, I know that I will after this, because there are a lot of gems shared. You can learn just as much from your peers that you can from those who are X number of years older than you. And, you know, I really accredit you for coming on the show and being able to share with us so vulnerably.
Yeah.
All that you've been
through. It sounds like amazing that you've had mentors and opportunities, and the fact that you also opened the door for yourself. I did like that. I feel like was like the biggest theme.
Yes.
We opened doors for ourselves and created our own agency within the industry. So I want people to take that away as well, because that's number one.
And the easiest doors are the ones we open. They really are.
Okay, that's a quote. That's a quote. That's a quote right there. That's a quote.
Okay, yes. Alicia, let our listeners know where they can find you.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yes, you can find me on Google. No, my Instagram is as filmed by Alicia. You can, but honestly, real talk, like if you guys are filmmakers and all of that stuff, I love reading stuff. And I'm saying that because like a lot of execs will say that, and my friends are going to laugh at me like, you set yourself up. No, but I just want to say that, seriously, I love championing and being a part of, not even championing, like you guys are doing amazing stuff. Like Akila and Ebony, you guys are like really killing it, the game. And I'm so excited to be here, and I'm excited to listen and be a viewer. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Okay. And you can find me chatting business, pop culture, and lifestyle at Akila Friend. Evene chatting about Black entrepreneurs in her Millennial Visionary series at Evene Chapman 12. And of course, keep up with us at the Black Creators Club at the Black Creators Club on all platforms. Thank you so much for joining us today. And remember to abide by your ABCs. Always be creating. Thanks.